welcome back to 40 Days of Holiness. Let's grab a workbook. Today we're going to take some notes and we're going to talk. This is going to be one of the toughest things to explain in all of it. So put on your thinking cap, buckle up, and let's talk about day 13. God provided holiness in Jesus on the cross. I want to start with a song called In the Blood by John Mayer. I want you to listen as he wrestles with his heart and how it keeps him tied to the sin in his life. And we're going to transition. Here's what he wrote. How much of my mother has my mother left in me? How much of my love will be insane to some degree? And what about this feeling that I'm never good enough? Will it wash out in the water, or is it always in the blood? How much of my Father am I destined to become? Will I dim the lights inside me just to satisfy someone? Will I let this woman kill me or do away with jealous love? Will it wash out in the water? Or is it always in the blood? I can feel the love I want. I can feel the love I need, but they're never going to come the way I am. Could I change it if I wanted? Could I rise above the flood? Will it wash out in the water, or is it always in the blood? Do you feel what he's struggling with there? Is it just in me? Like, is this just who I am? It's in my blood. I can't ever be rid of it. All of this. John, if you're listening, I know what you need. You need better blood. You need some blood flowing in your veins that was shed 2,000 years ago. The blood of Jesus can change that. Hebrews 13:12 says, and so Jesus also suffered outside the city gate to make the people holy through his own blood. So let's recap real quick. God's holy. He requires holiness. He wills it for his people. He taught us about how to get there, but our own nature of unholiness means we can't create it or reach it in our own lives. But today, I've got good news. God decided to provide holiness as a gift. He provides holiness through justification, through imputing to me the righteousness of Jesus Christ, his obedience for my sin. And this is when he declares us not guilty. 2 Corinthians 5:21 says, God made him who had no sin to be made sin for us so that we might become the righteousness of God in him. But does God only provide judicial holiness, like I declare you not guilty? No. He also provides us with dynamic, actual holiness as well. Ephesians 5:25 says, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her to make her holy, cleansing her. Now, that's not actually the best translation here. The NIV marginal translation in the sidebar is actually more accurate here. Here's what it ought to say. It should say, having cleansed her, having cleansed his church. So here's the way the Greek really should be translated. Let's go back to Ephesians 5:25 and read it that way. Just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her to make her holy, having cleansed her. So I want you to point out that this cleansing, washing is before the rest of the holiness that God provides. So he provides cleansing and washing, and he's got more, right? We're washed and cleansed, and then holiness continues. So remember how God delivered his people in order to go out and make his covenant with them and make them holy? He took them out of Egypt, away from sin, broke the old gods through the 10 plagues, and he took them figuratively through the baptism waters of the Red Sea, and then he brings them to the holy mountain to make his covenant of holiness with them, to make them holy as he is holy. Right? The blood of Christ contains all the atonement that's necessary to forgive us, but also for every phase of our Christian life. It doesn't wash out in the water, no, but it does wash out in the blood. Now, imagine that this bottle is rolled in mud, right? It's both dirty and it doesn't sit straight, right? It's dirty and it doesn't sit straight. Romans 8 tells us that in God's sight, we are justified and glorified in God's sight. So the one who inhabits eternity, who sees the end and the beginning, in the same way, God comes and takes us out of the mud, washes us clean, and he sees the full journey that he has us on. He sees that he's going to grant us a full measure of his holiness. He sees us as we are, but he calls us what we will be. The scope of salvation, right? Romans 8 says we're justified and glorified in God's eyes. So he sees it all. Oh, don't miss this. He is committed to the whole journey of bringing about everything that he's provided. He provides holiness on the cross, and then he sets about creating in reality what he gifted to us. He knows that our nature is a lack, an empty. There's an emptiness we were born with. He knows he's going to restore it. So he says, you're sanctified, you're holy. And then he goes about creating in reality what he has gifted to us in a moment. Now don't miss this. He says you're sanctified, you're holy. And then he goes about making it so in our actual lives. He goes about actually straightening out, actually restoring, actually rebuilding everything that sin has broken. Holiness is gifted to us at the new birth. God sees the whole thing. In a moment, he declares us holy before we have done anything holy. He says, you're saints. Why? Because it won't wash out in the water, but it will wash out in the blood of Jesus. Right? That's where it's at. God is granting to us in a moment of time the holiness that he is now going to produce in us in time. So in a moment he says, I grant to you, I see you as holy, and now I'm going to make you holy in every single way. Now, we'll talk about tomorrow how God, and over the rest of the time, how God goes about doing that. But the good news is that in a moment of time, God gifts to us that which we don't have. He says, you're mine, you're holy, I choose you, I select you, and now I'm going to make you on an ongoing basis holy. I don't know if I'm doing an adequate job explaining that one. Stick with me, okay? We're gonna continue learning this and explaining how God produces what he has already created and declared us to be. All right? God bless you. See you tomorrow.